We are going
Jackie,
to.
I want you to let us know in the Discord as soon as you see this.
And how you feel.
Yes.
Tell us how you feel.
It's all my fault. I am so
Deep,
sorry.
deep down. Like...
So we will try to give the best recap we can, because whoever's watching this in the future, they were watching 40, and they were like, where's 41? I'll check out 42 to see what's going on. So this is us apologizing deeply. You will never find it. It is not there. So we will do our best to recap it, but it was almost a month ago that we played it. So maybe a little fun.
All right. So long lost episode of session 41. The end of day 1 of year 6. We'd arrived at Sherfield, where Kurtz Velasquez is originally from, where his family, including his wife and his 2 children, were raised. At this point, however, Sherfield is a little bit different than he remembered. In the original timeline, the first horseman, Conquest, had arrived in Sherfield and completely decimated it, leaving Kurtz as the only survivor. However, with our intervention, Conquest was destroyed before he could get to Sherfield, so now we witness the village as he remembers it before the horsemen came. His wife, Anna, is still alive, although she was afflicted by the the plague that was brought on by Conquest, and she is bedridden. And we had put off visiting her for about 5 years, technically. A little shorter, but still 5 years. So we finally threw Kurtz a bone. We defeated a horseman, said, hey, what the hell, let's go to Sherfield. And so after a few little side quests and getting some new friends, we arrived. We found that Sherfield is a rather diverse population with a large number of wood elves. It is led by a orcish shaman named Boris. And we also learned that Kurtz has an older brother.
Yes.
That never came up, named Himmler. Pretty nice guy. Also very gruff. But tanner by trade. And Rin hater by just passion. So we discussed, we went to Anna, and Kurtz decided to lay it all out on the table. Everything about us being chosen by Alundra and by the goddesses, of us time traveling, and how the original timeline went, and how their daughters are apparently still alive and being tended to by the temple in Candoria or somewhere else. At first, his wife thought he was insane. Fair. But after showing her some proof, some evidence of our travels, she began to believe for all the good it will do us, because she will forget everything she learned at the end of the week. But for this week...
Wow, Connor.
That's fair. That's fair.
Way to fucking kill that joy, huh?
Just laying it all out there. But on a happier note... today, the day we arrived at Sherfield, happened to be the day of a festival, that of the Yule log, them dragging a giant tree to burn as a sign of good luck for the rest of the year, presided by the orc shaman. Several of us partook, whether it be drinking, playing games, having a menage a trois in Finley's case. And good times were had by all, while Kurtz stayed home and got reacquainted with his wife. And that, unless I'm mistaken, is about everything that happened.
Let's get a recap. And tonight, we're changing it up. AJ's going to do the recap. Let's see how much better he is at it. Maybe we'll have to replace Connor. I'm just kidding.
I have expectations now. So last week when we were here, we had settled down in Kurtz's farm estate, giving him time to spend with his wife as we rested for 2 days there, having a few moments of fun as we went about the festivities for the Yule log. Finley, of course, having a little bit more what you would call private fun time. He went off and had a moment with 2 lovely ladies, but seemed to find that he was missing a few items of his, some ice chalk and some manacles, as he returned, finding himself a little lighter in other cases and a little itchier in other places. Fortunately for him, Urgra was kind enough to go to the local druid to see if she could find a salve to help alleviate Finley's symptoms. Of course, as Urgra, Finley, Rin, and Kurt spent their time at the estate, the days passed on, where eventually we returned back to Candoria proper, where we then rendezvoused with let's see, it's Caldabar and Tatiana, who were making their way, or needed to make their way, to the stone giants that they had been invited to see the birth. We promised to escort them and show them the place to go, and of course, as we arrived, we dove down into our familiar path, which is a underwater river that allowed us to submerge ourselves, let the current carry us down there before we once more reached the banks of the stone giant's chambers, finding an interesting stone head being carved in this room that was very peculiar and a little off-putting, but we did find it was a statue, and we found the carver, a stone giant who was a little hesitant to our presence being here, but we convinced him that we were on legitimate business and were to seek his chieftain and shaman. After learning that he was carving this for the new birth that came into the clan or tribe, we made our way down the familiar path, and once more seeing the chieftain in a rather disturbed state, and not very willing to talk to us as he stormed off on his own, while Helga, the shaman, was able to enlighten us with the birthing and its meaning behind its coming into the world, as it has on its skin markings and words that are used to interpret the goddess's wills. Now, we were unable to really see this happen, but luckily the child is kept safe away from the light in a dark place off to the side. Rin, fortunately, was able to convince her to guide him over there and hopes to see the child for himself. But as he was venturing off in one direction, Kurt seemed to be lured in the opposite, as he saw what appeared to be a very familiar blue-like sphered orb off to the side. Picking it up in hopes to maybe slide it into his pocket, he caught the attention of a stone giant, who thought that perhaps his attempt to lift this thing was to enact a challenge of rock throwing. And now we have ourselves split off. Kurtz not knowing what to do, and Rin waiting to see what lies below. That's where we have left off.
Awesome. And then also, Kurtz had made some kind of oath, which seemed to...
Oh, that's right, I forgot. He is a paladin. Yes. Okay. He finally decided to wrestle with the decision of putting his loyalty to the goddesses and have faith, and to follow the code set before him. With enough convincing, he finally chose to become a follower of this path, allowing him the blessed powers of a paladin, which he used to cure Finley of his STD.
Yes, he did. All right.
My man.
So, last time, episode 43 of HotA, we were below ground in a cave, once again, among stone giants,
favorite terrain.
Witness a prophesized birth of a new stone giant. However, due to decisions early in the week, we kind of missed that boat. So, baby had already been born from the earth, as it turns out. However, with a little bit of shenanigans, we were able to not only get a good look at the new stone giant, getting a little bit of insight into what their seer had portrayed for the future, which was apparently to go deeper into the earth. But we also were able to find another blue orb of Finley's. And so that was another fun thing. We quickly returned to Candoria proper, to the Red Dragon Inn, where we met our new acquaintance, a Chiefess Mudjaw, who told us at the very beginning of the week that, hey, my village is, like, people are gone, and also there's this green mist stuff. Do you want to check it out? We said, sure. We came back, and lo and behold, when we came to the village of dwarves, I believe it was Strongfair, it was night, because of course, and a green mist just emanated from the central temple to Carvalia, the dwarven goddess. And because maybe she's a dwarf, she just decided to go right on in, not take a rest. And lo and behold, upon entering this cathedral with no stealth, we discovered several things. First of all, two Duragar in blood circles, much like the ones you can see on the map, chanting furiously, and rising up zombies, as well as at the sort of the pulpit of the cathedral. Two more Duragar, as well as one, was it a mountain dwarf? This guy up here? Mountain Hill?
You guys are not sure.
A dwarf.
Yes, dwarf.
Short man.
Who is alive, a vertically challenged male, who appeared to be just perfectly fine where he was. Battle ensued, and, you know, there's a lot of zombies, and we're pulling out a lot of stops to try and stay alive, and that's about where we left off. Yeah. So, episode 44, we had, we're in the middle of combat, as a matter of fact, in a dwarven church to, Carvalia?
Carvalia.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The red-eyed goddess of the dwarves. And we were in a bit of a tight spot because the zombies just kept on coming, and there were just a lot of enemies that kept on spawning. However, luckily, our NPC started to use her cleric abilities much more effectively,
Thanks, Connor.
a number of the low-level enemies and clearing the way for our wizard and our bard and our fighter to get inside with the big bad and just cut them to pieces. And having done that, we were rewarded with Chiefess Mudjaw with a Carvalia stone, a red stone that is dedicated to Carvalia, and that was taken up by our fighter, Kurtz. After that, we did a little more travel and ended up back in the void with the stone that contains the soul of the priestess Alundra. And it was there that we learned what the sister stones actually do. Aside from the red Carvalia stone, Finley is also attuned to a green...
Who knew?
Damn it. What's that sister's name? Salvadine. A green Salvadine stone. And we found out that when activated and with a little bit of luck, Finley can get a free haste spell, and Kurtz pretty much can rage if he gets a lucky roll.
The Rager.
Yep. And so that's something certainly to look forward to. And having talked to Alundra, tried asking her some other questions, didn't get much for our time. But we were sent on our way to year 7 to see what it may hold for us.
Episode 46. Let's get a recap. What happened on episode 45 in case anybody missed it?
All right, so last time we began year 7 of our campaign, of our little time traveling, don't have a T word, journey. We started off, and we landed in quite a storm. We were in the capital city of Candoria proper, but leaves were falling off trees. Trees themselves were falling down. People had put up tarps over their roofs to make sure that the thatch doesn't blow away. And one of our first things was to get the F out of this horrible weather. So we ended up in our local stop, the Red Dragon Inn. We went through our Wizard's Manifesto containing information about every year that we were going to. And we learned that turns out on day 1, there's going to be an explosion at our local alchemist of Alfred's. So we decided to try and stop that if we possibly could. And we found that that shop was being manned by a boy with no experience. A young man by the name of Porter, who had been told to mix a bunch of potions with absolutely no instructions, no recipe, no experience. And so luckily we came to his aid. Between mostly Rin and Urgra, we were able to figure out what the heck we were supposed to do, and we were rewarded handsomely. 1, we didn't get blown up, but also we got 3 greater healing potions and a staff of healing, which is a super amazing item. After that, we decided to go see the Revenant, specifically the DRC, as we heard that they were having, they were experimenting with dealing with the increased number of monster attacks in this year. And we found out that they were experimenting with this newfound sort of crystal. And they found that once it was energized, they were using lightning for this, it seemed to draw in creatures from a certain radius to a certain area, which they thought would be very useful for maneuvering and just controlling the surplus of monsters. We decided to help by pretty much defending a tower that was surrounded by these crystals.
Defending a tower.
Yeah.
You know, defending the tower, mostly its occupants. So we got a different type of combat, arming ourselves with either a trebuchet or a ballista. Turns out Roll20 was not with us at all. I think each of us got maybe 2 hits out of 4 rounds. And
yeah, we're terrible. That's it.
We abandoned the tower and saved our lives. Finley lost a shoe as the tower collapsed. But otherwise, no permanent damage done.
We also got paid, so...
We did get paid a little something.
So, you know.
Oh, we got paid quite a bit.
Year 7, that's pocket change. But with that pocket change, Rand went on a bit of a shopping spree. Urgra got herself some new armor, and Kurtz and Finley decided to start looking into boats, of all things. However, with that being done, our next stop is to go to the Shroud, the home of the Tabaxi, and possibly look into what is troubling the tiger population. And to do that, we need to find Flame? Yes, Flame. Yes. A tiger who is currently staying in Candoria, who may be able to tell us more.
All right. Let's get a recap. Yeah. Connor, what happened last week on Horseman of the Apocalypse Season 1?
Yeah, Connor.
Holy shit, so much. So, started off pretty, mellow. Finley and Kurtz looking for boats.
As you do.
Urgra and Rin go shopping a little bit. She finds some cheap-ass armor for Kurtz to mend using the cantrip. We get back. There's a little stowaway in the armor she bought. Turns out there is a very familiar little doll that looks exactly like her and has visible strings coming out of it, animating it. There were some strong but mixed emotions from the party when this was discovered, and what ended up happening was Finley was insistent that the doll not be harmed. He donned his mask of the Mad One and ran the F away. Urgra immediately gave chase, hunters marking the doll, but unfortunately with Dimension Door, there's not a whole lot that a ranger can do. And so Finley went on a little adventure with little Urgra and went back to the alchemist shop, Alfred's, and luckily didn't blow the place up, fulfilling the prophecy, but she did get covered in fire beetle paste, and luckily that did not hurt Urgra, which was a very nice thing to know. Eventually the party regrouped at the Red Dragon Inn, and a compromise was made. They would carry along the little doll and would not harm it, but they didn't have to like it. That was pretty much the compromise. Finley got exactly what he wanted. No one else was happy.
That's a good compromise.
Yep. It's like the only compromise. That sounds about right. That's the only compromise I really go for, is where I'm happy.
After that, we tracked down the Tiger Tabaxi Flame, who was our lead to the Tabaxi, where the tiger population was involved in some sort of fungal infection, likely due to them being camped out in a swamp. He had a scroll with a sort of poem riddle written on it that he could not make heads or tails of. The party offered their suggestions and also offered to follow him back to the swamp to try and figure out how to cure his tribe of this fungus, as well as deal with apparently the bullywug infestation. However, en route, little Urgra decided to speak up with interpretive dance and point us off in a completely different direction, leading to who knows where. We knew it was danger. We knew apparently it was helpful. That was about it. We decided to give her the benefit of the doubt, and Flame went his own way, and we went with the creepy possessed doll, only to find ourselves on the outside of what apparently is a temple that is being excavated by the Cult of Chaos, our old nemesis. This temple is called, where is it? The Chamber of Hearts. We have already taken out the lookouts and also got one onto our side thanks to Finley's suggestion, and we took out one of their head cultists who was able to use some very strong abjuration magic. And now we are at the mouth of the cave and liable to see what is inside. So, last week on episode 47, our party is in our time-hopping adventure in year 7 of the campaign, which means all of our characters are at level 7. Our last journey was to get to the Tabaxi village of the tigers. Apparently they're having a problem with some fungus, but we got a little sidetracked. And we ended up at a temple called the Chamber of Hearts, where a group known as the Cult of Chaos is trying to find something. We're not entirely sure what, but we have been killing everyone on our path to try and beat them to it. We have come up against 2 powerful opponents, a cultist, a pylon cultist who's focused mainly on abjuration magic, and then a devout cultist who is just really a pain in the ass all around, played by Spaz. However, we were eventually able to kill both of them separately. And after killing the devout cultist, a new magical item was found. One that the party seemed to be led to by a small doll that looked like my character, Urgra, that has an association with a old NPC that we know as the Masked One. Or the Mad One? The Mad One, sorry. He also wears a mask.
Yes.
And he is a harlequin force of chaos. We have no chance of beating him. We just try to survive with as little damage as possible. And his little minion led us to this blindfold that she really wanted Urgra to wear. Urgra, in order to get rid of this damn creepy doll, finally put it on, only to discover that, hey, it made her blind. But it also gave her blind sight and more powerful sense of hearing, as well as smell, as well as several other abilities that she has not revealed to the party. She has been trying to get used to this item as much as possible. It's been tough, especially when she went out into a rainstorm and vomited due to a 120-foot range of just raindrops falling everywhere. Yep. That was fun. But otherwise, we are exploring one of the last portions of the temple, which we have not yet explored, and we're going to see what we find.
All right, let's get a recap. Enough of me talking. Connor, what happened last week on episode 48?
Yeah, Connor.
He seems very delayed.
Yeah, we're sure going to try. All right, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay,
but you're not
got one
for
answer.
Like 10 seconds.
What a delay.
Okay, well, great. Anywho, episode number 48. We're on day 2 of year 7. We were infiltrating a temple dedicated to hearts, apparently, as we had come across a bunch of corpses with their hearts removed. We ended up defeating 2 very powerful individuals who had claimed to be the leaders of the cultists, one of whom was in the same room as a very powerful magical object that had sent Urgra to collect, a blindfold. And after her little guide, a little doll that looked just like her, continued to annoy her endlessly, Urgra eventually put on the blindfold, becoming blind in a way, but also gaining blind sight as well as a few new abilities.
Mm-hmm.
With a bit of a learning curve, she was able to figure out how to fight again, and we continued exploring the temple. We found 3 kind of sarcophagi in a chamber further in, and one had a apparently completely mundane quiver, but the other 2 were empty. Still don't know what that means. Okay. We journeyed on, though, into another small, apparently held kegs full of ale from Banff. What does Banff stand for again?
Badass motherfucker.
Kind of what I feel like, but I was wondering if there was actually like something else.
Bards and minstrels, something.
Faction.
Fabulous.
Bardic Assembly of Musical Foolery or something like that.
Foolery.
I'd have to double check it.
I'm pretty sure it's foolery. Yep.
Okay, I was just curious.
Sure.
So after that, we continued to explore, and eventually we found a chamber filled with 4 apparatus of just multiple hearts linked together. Mm-hmm. And this was being presided over by an individual, a male, with purple eyes, white hair, and ashy skin, who apparently went by Surindar, although he told us that was not his real name. Mm-hmm. He was interested in conversation for about a minute, and then he wanted to see if he could kill us and how hard it would be. So combat ensued. Things went not so good until we began to actually attack the heart apparatus, which apparently was linked to his own powers. Mm-hmm. Once we were able to destroy those, though, the battle quickly turned in our favor, especially after Urgra used her new blindfold ability to actually make her enemy blind. And from there, eventually Surindar called a standstill to the battle. He was losing, and he basically warned us that if he died, then this entire place would collapse on us in seconds. So we decided to hear him out. We learned a few new things, and also got a few new items, including a new book on what we...
It was going so well.
He was, like, right there.
It was right there.
What happened? The cliffhanger!
We got a book Full of spells, right, or something.
Okay, what's the last thing you heard?
Book. The cliffhanger.
Book.
Oh, book. Okay. So Ring got a book, and there was one other item that we got from the bag. What was it, though? I forget.
It was the ability to cast the scroll, that thingy on weapons.
That's right. The spell scrolls that would amplify weapons and give them necrotic damage. So he gave us this bag, and after a little bit of conversation, including possibly how to infiltrate the Cult of Chaos, who was running this temple, he harakiri'd himself and stabbed himself through with his sword. After which, turns out he wasn't a liar, and the temple started to collapse. All of us were able to barely make it out with our lives, with our new treasure. That is about...
He's so close. It's like dangling a bone in front of a dog.
He's back. Hey, Connor! Welcome back. It is so good to have you with us. I'm glad you came back.
So what's the last thing you heard this time?
I don't even remember now. It was like 4 years ago.
So episode 49. We had just narrowly escaped a collapsing mountain known as the Chamber of Hearts, where we fought several very deadly enemies, the last of which appeared to be some sort of angel-human crossbreed who used living human hearts to give himself more power. We were able to defeat him eventually, and he gave us some parting words as well as parting gifts, one of which was a book that contained some forbidden lore, as well as, I think, a cipher for possibly another location of the Cult of Chaos that we had investigated before, but we're out of luck because we didn't have that cipher. So maybe in the future we can look into that. However, with that in mind, we decided to meet up with the quest that we were previously on, and that was to help the Tiger Tabaxi with apparently a fungal problem. They had set down in a swamp, and we've learned that they did that because a huge swarm of sturges, giant mosquitoes, had infested the area and were threatening everything around them. And so they, being the heroic tabaxi that they were, decided to step in. Unfortunately, as soon as they stepped paw in the swamp, they developed a very painful fungal problem that could not be cured by dispelling magic or clerical spells or anything else they have tried. So they sent one of their own, known as Flame, to Candoria, where we met him to try and get help. So we showed up, looked at the fungus, didn't know what it was, but we found out that maybe the inhabitants of the swamp would know, some sort of frog creatures. We had previously been given a poem giving some clues as to how to enter their domain. So with that in mind, we went into a temple after coming across several traps as well as mimics disguised as treasure chests. 3, in fact. 3 mimics.
Every treasure chest in that dungeon.
Every treasure chest. Because who does treasure chests anymore? They were all mimics.
The outright disrespect.
So 2019.
So eventually we put all those down and came across a very elaborate trap involving lava and an animated shuriken that would behead anyone who wasn't careful. However, using a cunning use of... Ren, what's that spell?
Unseen Servant?
Unseen Servant. I'm like, illusory servant is not the right. Unseen Servant. Apparently, they did not set off the trap, and so they were able to key in the code that allowed what we needed to drop from the sky, a crystal that we were able to collect, and then we had to decide to put it into one of 4 different slots in the wall to proceed. We rallied chat to try and get their opinion, and we followed chat, and now we're facing a stone golem.
Exactly. All right, so the stone golem started to animate and taking form and moving and kind of pulling itself out of the platform you guys were in right as the Unseen Servant had placed the Crimson Bead right into one of the tomes. I'll forget.
Yeah, you.
So, episode 50 of HotA Season 1 started off like many good D&D sessions do with combat that we were surprised by because we got a riddle wrong. And so a statue came to life in the form of a stone golem, attacking us using immense strength, lots of resistance, and also a slow spell, which is always fun to deal with. Rin, our wizard, trying to figure a way to possibly deactivate it or just get us a way out, tried to answer the riddle another way by putting, which is basically pushing a button or putting an orb in a little slot. Turns out that was the wrong one too, and another stone giant came to life, which we then had to deal with simultaneously. And so eventually we were able to defeat them, and also found out that, hey, there is also a fire elemental on the field that possibly is our last thing if we get this last one wrong. Luckily, out of the 2 remaining options, we lucked upon the right one, and the wall opening to a jungle area. We cautiously explored out, and through some good perception checks found we were surrounded by little frog people. Dozens and dozens of little frog people. Given the number situation, we decided to play courteous, ask for their leader to explain what we were there for. They were relatively trusting, considering we hadn't done anything to harm them. Their leader was a prick. He very engorged frog gentleman by the name of Chief Corona, who toted around 3 little grung slaves. We learned quite a bit from him, including that the grung are pretty much in servitude to these bullywug leaders. And they, in fact, had been harvesting the grung poison and had been trying to create a sort of uber poison to protect themselves, maybe take over the world. Didn't quite get that far. But apparently they did create it, but it was too powerful for them. So responsibly, they dumped their waste in the swamp. So...
as one does, yeah, exactly.
Where else do I get rid of all this shit?
So, upon a little bit of further questioning, though, we found out that through a very difficult insight check that maybe, perhaps, they have a cure for this uber poison hidden somewhere behind a door that was pointed to.
But they don't have it, though.
He explicitly said that. No, they do not.
In the meanwhile, during this conversation, Finley had hidden himself away, still wearing the mask of the Mad One, and decided to explore the compound of the bullywugs while we were keeping them distracted. Very successfully, he was able to gather a barrel of this strange pink fluid. But in the meantime, apparently the Chief Corona wanted to basically test our bravery and asking us to basically pet his slaves, knowing that they were poisonous. Rin, using a little bit of his own conjuring magic, conjuring a glove on his hand, was able to touch them with no effect, leading Chief Corona to think that he was a chosen one who was not affected by any of the Grung's poison, which led us to an opportunity to face his champion in combat. Didn't quite get that far. Due to the continuous mistreatment of his little grung slaves, Kurtz was finally pushed too far in the middle of their hideout and had the chief at sword point. At which point, all hell broke loose. Finley licked some of the pink fluid and became attracted to one of the the bullywug guards outside. And we tried to fight, but there were a lot of them. Kurtz got speared a lot, and also the champion that maybe we were going to fight alone also came out to play, and he's tough, y'all. And so now Kurtz is in a real bad spot. Ran away. Urgra tactfully retreated to a more advantageous position, and Finley is paralyzed at the moment.
I like how I ran away, but you tactfully retreated.
Who's telling the story?
You want to tell your own way? You do the recaps.
Yeah, I'm still with the line of sight of Kurtz, and I'm actively healing him.
I'm getting allies. I'm getting reinforcements.
Yeah, how's that going?
I don't know. I'll let you know.